For the first part of this series, just want to look at rods and reels really, and what is the best rod and reel to get you started, and just wanted to find a rod and reel that will get you out there fishing in the UK and what you should be looking at to get started. Now, a newcomer to the sport will probably be a little bit confused when you look at all the types of rods. You've got LRF, light rock fishing, pier rods, mackerel rods, continentals now, bass, flatfish and estuary rods. However, what we really recommend, what most anglers would recommend, would be a 12-foot beach rod, possibly 13-foot. But if you're starting off fishing for the first time, then a rod like this is actually a 20-pound rod, and this is rung for what we call fixed spool reels, and we'll take a look at those in a moment. And this rod, you should be able to pick up something like this for about 20 quid really, and they'll come in package deals as well, so they'll come with the reels. And maybe a few bits to get you fishing. So this rod here is pretty basic. You see it's got a little spigot joint here, and these are two equal 6-foot size. So running down the rod, really the materials that go into it dictate the price. Carbon gets used more in the higher end rods, and the blend makes a difference to the price. But when you go down the blank, it gets thinner towards the end. This is the rod tip itself. It's got some yellow paint on this one. That makes bite detection easier in low light conditions as well. So if you do get to pick one up in a tackle shop, have a little look at the rod rings. There's less rod rings on a fixed spool rod than there are on a multiplier rod. Just check that they are in place, nice and straight, and the little ring thing hasn't fallen out or it's bent. But usually they'll be fine. That's a reel seat, that's where the reel goes. That's a winch reel seat fitting, and the rod feet will go in that. We'll take a look at that later as well. So if you're having a look online, just moving on to the reels now. This is not a bad one actually. This is from Veals. Veals are a good online company. Check their reels out if you get a chance. Tronix Pro as well. They do this Virtuoso XT and ST reels. This is the 8000, and you'll start to notice numbers after a reel, and that gives a reasonably good indication of the size of it. X8000 here for Tronix is their beach range size. You've also got Shimano as well. They do a lot of good reels for beach angling. This is the XSB. The B stands for beach. Their numbering system's a little bit higher actually, and we'll come on to that in a minute. So let's take a look here. This is my Penn Surf Blaster. This is the 8000. A little bit more expensive these, about 80-90 quid. You should be able to get one of them. It's got an ambidextrous handle, so you can move the handle either to the left side of the reel or the right, obviously depending on whether you're right or left-handed. That handle actually comes out. It's got a good strong handle, this one, rubberized, moves quite well. But remember, you'll probably be using these reels in quite harsh conditions. So if you're picking one up for the first time, you can spend as much money as you like on these reels, but for getting you fishing out and about there, you should be able to get something for about £40, or as part of a kit, as we were saying earlier. So this is the bail arm. This is the bit that catches the line, and it's got a nice strong click, and it stays locked there, so when you're in the casting position it doesn't flick back over by accident. That's something to watch out for on the cheaper reels. This is quite a large diameter spool, 3 inches. It's a little bit over 3 inches, this one. So you're looking for a spool with about 3 inches wide. You can take them off and change the spools as well on these. So depending on what the parts are made of really dictates the cost of the reel. So yeah, pretty much something like this if you're fishing for the first time. Quite a large spool, that one, particularly if you're used to using freshwater tackle. And this spool actually works as like a drag system, so you can loosen the spool. Spin that back on. You can loosen the spool, and then if a fish takes line, it'll actually drag line off the reel if you want it to, and that handle actually tightens up. That button there that I'm touching will lock the spool as well. We'll take a look at that in a minute. So you back wind it just to tighten up that handle. I see a good example of a half decent fixed spool reel for beach fishing. I had a quick browse through Google using beach fishing or sea fishing tackle as a search, and most of the major tackle manufacturers do have a beginner's beach outfit, and they'll chuck in a lot of bits and bobs with that, and it's not a bad place to start even if you're doing it online. The other option would be to go into a tackle shop as well, and they've usually got some good friendly advice when you come in. Lots of rods and reels are designed for the entry-level angler or the holiday angler, and it's probably a good place to start. Tronix use the sort of 8,000, 7,000 sizes. Daiwas vary between 5,000, 6,000 and larger. Shakespeare tend to use the double-digit ones, 70 or 80. Penn 7,000 and 8,000, as we've seen. And Shimano's, find a little bit confusing with Shimano's, a bit bigger. So like a really big fixed spool with Shimano would be 14,000. Okay, so you've bought your first reel, and most tackle shops will put the line on for you, or it will come with a decent amount of monofilament line. General beach fishing, you can't go too far wrong with something like a 15-pound line. As I say, it should be on the spool for you, but if you need to tie it on, best not to use is this one. Wrap it half around the spool like that and do an overhand knot. That spool's seen better days, hasn't it? But yeah, do an overhand knot like that and then tighten it a little bit. You always moisten fishing knots, and then you want to wrap that round the line again, so you've got it round the spool, a knot on it, and then you're going to do another overhand knot through there. Just have a little look at that. So you've got round the spool a knot that knots the bit going to the line you want to put on, and the running end of the line with the knot in it, and then you want to just tighten everything up. Again, you'd moisten at this point. The line that you're going to put on here, the mono line, would be 15 pounds. We're actually using 30 here just so you can see it a little bit better in the video, so it wouldn't be this thick and it actually wouldn't be this hard to knot down. But just squeeze that on, work it all the way back up to the spool, and that way if you run out of line with a fish on, you get some sort of mega fish that will take it down to the end of the spool. It should be nice and tight on the line, and that won't slip. That's a good knot, that one. The main thing is it just stops that slipping on the spool underneath. So there we go, that's very tight. That's called the ARBOUR knot. I actually use nail clippers quite a lot, and you just clip those and that shouldn't slip. You put the spool back on. You see I've put the bail arm over there as well, and then you tie that, and then you screw that spool back on, put the bail arm back, and then the line sits in that guide runner in a minute. Tighten that right the way down, and then goes onto the winch fitting on the beach rod you see up there on the left. It's a little bit small, that reel there for beach fishing. As I say, refer to those earlier sizes really. And there we go. So the line's on the spool, and then it's running through the bail arm. And then if you look at this little diagram here, what that's showing through my very amateurish graphic skills, the line comes off the reel through the rod, and then over there on the right hand side you can see the what represents the spool of line, and you usually get about 300 meters, something like that, of 15-pound line on a fixed spool reel. And you can buy cheap holders on eBay. There's pictures there of 3. I'll put the links for those as well in the notes. And it just clamps the big spooler reel that you want to put on the line in nice and neatly. And there are better versions of those through the main tackle manufacturers. Again, we'll put some of that in the notes. This is something I've just rigged up really just to give a rough idea. So you can, the main thing is it needs to roll off the spool in that direction and not come off on an edge like that. So we've got the line, and now we're going to tie a leader knot, and we recommend you use a leader knot if you're beach fishing. Line that's in my right hand, and then the leader line in my left hand will be about 60 pounds for what we're going to show you here. So the first thing I do is I just tie an overhand knot in the thicker leader line like that, and then you want to leave like a little loop in there because you're going to come through with the main line working right to left, and then you're going to pull that through. You're going to need about, I'd say about 10 inches or so there, and then with your forefinger and thumb keep that nice and tight, and then I try and keep this part of the leader line quite straight as well, and that'll come clear in a minute. So all you're going to do is go round here once, twice, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go 6 times round there, and then form another loop with that black line so it looks a bit like that. And I'm still pinching with my thumb and forefinger the tail end here, that's wiggling, of the main line and the knot of the leader line. Okay, so working back the other way, I'm going to do the same amount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I go 7 there, and then hold that tail there. So as you can see, you've got the loop and then the line running through it one way and back the other. Okay, at this point you would moisten the line. So we moisten the line there, and then you're going to pull the tail end of the main line. Okay, so hold on to the knot here with your finger and thumb, just loosely, and then pull from, as you're looking at it, left, right to left, that tail out in that direction, and that should form a nice straight knot on the line. And when you get to about there, it will start to bite on the leader line, so just pinch it with your thumb and forefinger, and then pull on the tail, pinch it a little bit, pull on the tail, and then all those loops should be nice and straight and flat. Now you're going to pull that back in the other direction, but what's going to happen when you get to that leader knot is it will go through it if it's too wide. So when you get to about there, keeping everything tight, just pull the tail of that, maybe pinch the knot down a bit so it doesn't fall right the way through, and then when you get, and then when the two knots meet, they'll bite on each other like that. And actually when you pull on the main line, it helps the leader knot to get tighter. So there you go, and I'm really pulling on that now in both directions. Okay, and that's definitely going nowhere, and we've obviously moistened it well as well. And then you want to clip the ends off. Don't want to go too close, but you don't want lots of tails hanging off either. There you go, a simple, easy leader knot. And here's the beach reel in action. This is our little 6000 Mitchell reel, a little bit small really for beach fishing, but there it goes. So you've got the spools moving up and down, you can see that as I turn the handle, and that bail arm is laying that line quite nicely across the spool, so you don't need to worry too much about that. The reel is doing its work. A little bit small, that Mitchell 6000. There you go, battered old reel, that one. So this is your matched rod and reel. You've seen how to put the rod together. When you're setting up on the beach for the first time, it's better to get out the wind, perhaps do it behind some sort of shelter if you can, just to concentrate on making sure your tackle's spot on before you fish. You should have a leader line attached, which will make it a lot easier to thread through the rod rings. When you're pulling the line through that first rod ring there, so loosening up this spool, Means you can pull that line through. So thread the line through the rod rings one at a time. And that's it, we're all set up, ready for our first cast, and we'll take a look at that in the second episode next week.